The great crystal towers of Zentara Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the tallest tower, the Galactic Council sat in their ancient chambers. The room was huge and round, with seats made from materials that came from 1,000 different worlds. Each seat held a being that represented one of the galaxy's most powerful species. At the center of the room stood a human woman. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she was Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked plain next to the fancy robes and armor of the council members. In her hands she held a small device that contained Earth's request to join the Galactic Council. Sarah looked around the room at the faces staring down at her. Some had 4 eyes, others had scales instead of skin. A few were so tall they had to bend their necks to fit under the ceiling. But they all had one thing in common. They were looking at her like she was some kind of joke. The leader of the council was a creature called Vorthak Prime Zeltar. He was old, even by his species standards. His skin was gray like stone and his eyes glowed with a cold blue light. The Vorthak had been ruling parts of the galaxy for over 50,000 years. To him, humans were babies who had just learned to walk. So, Zeltar said, his voice echoing through the chamber, the creatures from the 3rd planet of Sol system think they are ready to join us. He made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like rocks falling down a mountain. Sarah kept her face calm. She had practiced this moment many times. The human species has developed faster than light travel. We have established colonies on 12 worlds in our local systems. We believe we meet all the requirements for council membership. A tall, thin creature with silver skin stood up. This was Zephyr Mindspeaker Velthera from the Zephyrian Collective. The Zephyrians could read thoughts and speak directly into other beings' minds. Velthera's mental voice reached everyone in the room at the same time. We have looked into the minds of your species, the voice said without moving lips. You are violent. You fight wars among yourselves even now. In just your last century, you have killed hundreds of millions of your own kind. Why should we trust such creatures with access to our trade routes and technology? Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. Humans have made mistakes, yes. But we learn from them. We grow, we adapt. These qualities make us strong allies and valuable members of any community. General Thexmore of the Krillian war caste laughed out loud. He was a huge creature covered in natural armor plates. His species had been warriors for their entire history. But even they had learned to follow the Council's rules. Strong allies, he said. Your entire species has existed for what? A few 100,000 years? Some of us have been alive longer than your civilization has existed. You have been in space for less than 100 years. We have been traveling between stars since before your son was born. More laughter filled the chamber. Sarah could feel her face getting red, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was too important to let emotions ruin everything. Time is not the only measure of worth, she said. Humans may be young, but we are innovative. We solve problems in ways others have not thought of. We could bring new ideas to the council. Zeltar leaned forward in his massive chair. New ideas? Child, every species thinks they have new ideas when they first reach the stars. The Altarians thought their crystal technology would change everything. The Regellians believed their bioships were revolutionary. Where are they now? They learned their place. They became part of the established order. They contribute their resources and follow our guidance as is proper. A snake-like creature called a Serpentis, coiled in its chair, spoke next. The humans have been observed for decades now. They show promise, yes, but they are not ready for full membership. Perhaps in a few thousand years when they have matured. Sarah looked around the room. She could see that minds were already made up. These beings had decided before she even arrived that humans were not worthy, but she had to try one more time. Members of the council, she said, raising her voice, I ask you to consider what humanity offers. We are adaptable. We are determined. When faced with challenges, we do not give up. We find ways to overcome them. These traits could serve the council well. Zeltar stood up slowly. His massive form cast a shadow over Sarah. The council has heard your request. We have considered your species application. Our decision is final. He paused, letting the silence fill the chamber. Sarah held her breath. The human species is denied membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, due to concerns about your species' violent nature and unpredictable behavior, the following restrictions are hereby placed upon humanity. Sarah felt her heart sink. But Zeltar was not finished. First, human expansion beyond your current solar system is forbidden. You will abandon all colonies outside the Sol system within 1 standard year. The words hit Sarah like physical blows, but worse was coming. Second, all contact between humans and other galactic species is prohibited, except through official council channels. Third, as compensation for the council's time and resources spent evaluating your species, Earth will provide tribute in the form of rare minerals, biological samples, and technological innovations. This tribute will be collected monthly. Sarah found her voice. This is not membership terms. This is slavery. Zeltar's glowing eyes fixed on her. This is wisdom. Every young species must learn its place in the galactic order. Some learn through cooperation. Others require more direct guidance. Consider yourselves fortunate that we are giving you the chance to prove yourselves worthy of eventual consideration. General Thexmore stood up, his armor plates clanking. The alternative is simple, human. Accept these terms or face the consequences of defying the Council's will. I have personally conquered 47 worlds whose species thought they were special. Your little blue planet would not even provide good practice for my forces. Sarah looked around the room one more time. Every face showed the same expression, cold dismissal. To them, she was not a representative of a proud species seeking partnership. She was a child who had wandered into an adult's meeting. I will carry your message to my government, she said quietly. Good, Zeltar said, sitting back down. Council enforcement ships will arrive in the Sol system within 60 standard days to begin implementing these restrictions. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. As Sarah turned to leave, Velthara's mental voice whispered directly into her mind, meant for her alone. Your anger burns bright, little human. But anger without power is just noise. Learn to accept what you cannot change. Sarah walked out of the chamber with her back straight and her head high, but inside she was thinking about Velthara's words. The Zephyrian was right about one thing. Anger without power was just noise. But what the Council did not understand about humans was this. When pushed far enough, humans did not just get angry. They got creative. And a creative human with enough motivation was something the galaxy had never seen before. As her small ship left Zentara Prime's atmosphere, Sarah looked back at the crystal towers one last time. The council members inside were probably already discussing other matters, having dismissed humanity as just another young species that would learn to know its place. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Back on the council floor, the members continued their session as if nothing important had happened. They discussed trade routes, resource allocations, and minor disputes between member species. The human problem was solved as far as they were concerned. Zeltar was reviewing reports from the outer rim when an aide approached him. Prime Zeltar, we have received confirmation that the human ambassador has left council space. Shall we begin preparing the enforcement fleet? Yes, Zeltar said without looking up from his work. Standard configuration should be sufficient. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen patrol ships. Enough to remind them we are serious. Not so much that we waste resources on such a minor task. General Thexmore overheard and chuckled. 3 cruisers? You are being generous, Prime Zeltar. One of my battle squadrons could handle their entire species. Perhaps, Zeltar replied. But it is better to appear strong than to risk appearing weak. The humans will comply or be removed. Either outcome serves the galaxy's stability. None of them noticed that their conversation was being recorded by hidden sensors throughout the chamber. None of them realized that those recordings would soon be transmitted across space to a small blue world where 8 billion humans were about to learn exactly what their neighbors thought of them. The Council had made their decision based on thousands of years of experience with other species. Every other race they had encountered had eventually submitted to their authority. Some took longer than others, but they all eventually learned that resistance was futile. They could not have known that they were dealing with the one species in the galaxy that had built their entire civilization on the simple idea that nothing was impossible if you were willing to work hard enough and think creatively enough. They could not have known that humans had a saying, "Hold my beer and watch this." The Council had just told 8 billion humans to hold their beer. The galaxy was about to find out what came next. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Earth with the Council's demands. The video of her report to the United Nations had been watched by every human on the planet. The silence in the assembly hall when she finished speaking lasted for nearly a full minute. President Maria Santos of the Earth Federation was the first to break that silence. "They want to treat us like pets," she had said quietly. "Like animals in a zoo." Now those same council ships floated in space near Mars, their dark hulls blocking out stars. They were beautiful in their own way, sleek and curved like sea creatures made of metal and crystal. But their beauty did not hide their purpose. They were there to make sure Earth obeyed. Captain Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizons, watching the alien vessels through her main screen. Her ship was one of the last human vessels still operating outside the Sol system. In 2 weeks, she was supposed to abandon the mining colony on Kepler 442b and return home. "Captain," her communications officer said, "we're getting another transmission from the council ships." "Put it through," Yuki said. The screen flickered, and the face of a Vorthak commander appeared. His gray skin looked like old leather, and his blue eyes glowed with cold authority. "Human vessel New Horizons, this is Commander Thakvol of the Council Enforcement Fleet. You have 14 standard days to evacuate all personnel from the prohibited colony and return to your home system. Any delay will result in the seizure of your ship and crew." Yuki had heard this message a dozen times already. "Understood, Commander. We are proceeding with evacuation as ordered." The Vorthak's expression did not change. "Good. Remember, human, your species' cooperation now determines how gently you will be treated in the future. Resist and face consequences." The transmission ended. Yuki stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to her first officer, Commander Jake Morrison. "Jake, what do you think would happen if we told them to go stuff themselves?" Jake smiled grimly. "Well, Captain, I think we'd find out real quick just how much firepower those pretty ships are carrying." Down on Kepler 442b, the mining colony was a busy place. 2,000 humans were packing up 5 years of work. The colony had been humanity's pride, a successful settlement on a world 27 light years from Earth. Now it was being abandoned, because aliens who had never set foot on the planet said humans were not allowed there. Colony Administrator Linda Park stood in the main dome, watching families load their belongings onto transport shuttles. Children who had been born on this world were leaving the only home they had ever known. "Ma'am," one of her assistants said, approaching with a data pad, "we've got a problem. The quantum resonance crystals in Mine Shaft 7. We can't move them safely with our current equipment. If we try, they might explode." Linda rubbed her forehead. The crystals were worth more than the rest of the colony combined, but they were also incredibly dangerous to transport. "How big an explosion?" "Big enough to crack the planet's crust. And if we leave them, the Council gets them when they inspect the abandoned colony." Linda stared out at the purple sky of Kepler 442b. Somewhere up there, alien ships were waiting to take possession of everything humans had built here. The thought made her stomach turn. Back on Earth, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in human history, every nation was working together toward a single goal. The United Nations had been replaced overnight by something called the Terran Defense Coalition. Every military officer, every scientist, every engineer who wanted to help was being recruited. Dr. Amanda Richards stood in a laboratory buried 3 kilometers under the Rocky Mountains. Around her, the brightest minds from every human nation were working on projects that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. "How are we doing on the Shah Alcubierre drive modifications?" she asked her team leader, Dr. Chen Wei. Chen looked up from a complex holographic display. "We've solved the power requirements, but we're still having problems with the navigation systems. Moving faster than light is one thing. Knowing where you're going is another. And the other projects? Project Thunderbolt is ahead of schedule. The weapons team thinks they can convert matter directly to energy with 97% efficiency. Project Ghost is, well, they won't tell me what they're working on, but they keep ordering more exotic materials." Amanda nodded. 3 months ago, none of these projects had existed. 3 months ago, humanity thought they were alone in the universe. Now they were racing to develop technology that could level the playing field with species that had been building starships since before humans discovered fire. In another part of the complex, General Marcus Webb was studying intelligence reports from the Council Enforcement Fleet. Marcus had started his career as a Marine, worked his way up through Special Forces, and spent the last decade planning theoretical defenses against hypothetical alien invasions. Now those theoretical plans were becoming very real. "Sir," his aide said, We've finished analyzing the Council ship's capabilities based on long-range scans. And they're impressive but not impossible. Their shields are strong, but they use a rotating frequency modulation. Their weapons are powerful, but they seem to rely on raw force rather than precision. And sir, they're old. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Old how? The basic design of those ships hasn't changed in thousands of years. They're reliable, proven tested, and predictable. Interesting. Marcus made a note on his pad. What about their numbers? Current count shows 47 ships in the enforcement fleet. Intelligence suggests the Council has maybe 10,000 ships total spread across their territory. 10,000 ships. Marcus whistled softly. That's a lot of firepower. Yes, sir, but they're spread thin. Most of their fleet is tied up in patrol duties and maintaining order across hundreds of worlds. If something were to happen that required their immediate attention in multiple locations at once, Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. They'd have to make choices about where to send their forces. Exactly, sir. Above ground, the world's news networks were trying to make sense of what was happening. Governments were nationalizing industries overnight. Factories that had been making cars were suddenly producing components for unknown military projects. Universities were being emptied as professors and students were recruited for classified research. In Moscow, Beijing, Washington, London, Tokyo, and every other major city, the story was the same. Humanity was mobilizing like never before. Lisa Zhang, a reporter for the Global News Network, stood outside a formerly civilian facility that was now surrounded by armed guards and razor wire. This is Lisa Zhang reporting from what used to be the Henderson Electronics factory in Nevada. 3 months ago, this building was producing consumer electronics. Today, it's classified as a military installation, working on what officials will only describe as defense projects. Similar transformations are happening worldwide as humanity prepares for, well, no one will say exactly what we're preparing for. What Lisa could not report because she did not know was what was really happening inside that facility. Engineers who had been designing smartphones were now working on miniaturized fusion reactors. Assembly lines that had built televisions were now producing components for weapons that existed only in theoretical physics papers. Dr. Sarah Kim had been the lead designer for a popular video game console. Now she was staring at blueprints for something called a quantum tunneling warhead. I still don't understand how this is supposed to work, she said to her new partner, Dr. Robert Okafor, who had been a physicist at Cambridge 3 months earlier. It's simple, Robert said, though his expression suggested it was anything but. We create a localized space-time distortion that allows matter to quantum tunnel directly into a target's molecular structure. The target doesn't get hit by the warhead materializes inside the target. Sarah stared at him. That's impossible. So was faster-than-light travel until we figured out how to do it last month. In space, the Council enforcement fleet continued their patrol. The alien commanders were pleased with how smoothly the human compliance was proceeding. A few more months and this would be just another successful pacification operation. Commander Thakvol reviewed the daily reports from his ship. Human vessels were abandoning their outer colonies as ordered. Earth's communications traffic had increased dramatically. But that was normal for a species facing new restrictions. Their industrial activity had also increased. But that was probably just an attempt to meet the tribute requirements. Commander, his sensor officer reported, we're detecting some unusual energy signatures from Earth. Unusual how? High-energy physics experiments. Massive power consumption. It could be related to their tribute production efforts. Thakvol nodded. Keep monitoring, but do not interfere unless they attempt to leave the system. The Council had dealt with dozens of species like the humans. There was always a period of adjustment, sometimes including attempts to develop new weapons or defensive measures. It never worked. The Council's technology was simply too advanced, their experience too vast. What Thakvol did not know was that down on Earth, Dr. Amanda Richards had just achieved a breakthrough that would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. We did it, she announced to her team. Stable faster-than-light communication using quantum-entangled particles. Real-time coordination across interstellar distances. Dr. Chen Wei looked up from his own work. That's great, Amanda, but how does it help us? Amanda smiled. Jake, you know what the Council's biggest advantage is? They think they know everything about warfare. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. But what if we could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously? What if we could appear everywhere at once? Across the galaxy, other species that had once defied the Council were watching the human situation with interest. Most had given up their independence long ago, but a few remembered what it felt like to be free. On a hidden base in the Rigel system, former Admiral Kethra of the Free Rigelian Navy was reading intelligence reports about Earth's activities. "Are they serious?" she asked her aide. "These humans actually think they can fight the entire Council?" "It appears so, Admiral. Our sources suggest they are developing new technologies at an unprecedented rate." Kethra was quiet for a long moment. Her people had tried to resist the Council 200 years ago. They had failed, and Rigel had been occupied ever since. But maybe, just maybe, these young humans might succeed where others had failed. "Send a message to Earth," she said quietly. "Use the old rebel communication channels. Tell them they are not alone." Back on Earth, humanity's greatest minds were working around the clock. They had exactly 8 months before the Council's patience ran out, and enforcement became more aggressive. 8 months to develop technology that could challenge the galaxy's greatest power. But humans had always done their best work under pressure. And they had never faced pressure like this before. The Council thought they were dealing with just another young species that would eventually learn to submit. They had no idea that humans were the one species in the galaxy that had never learned how to give up. The galaxy was about to get a very expensive education about what happened when you cornered the most adaptable, creative, and stubborn species in existence. The countdown to war had begun. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the command center buried deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in human space and beyond. The room hummed with quiet activity as hundreds of officers coordinated humanity's most ambitious military operation. 8 months had passed since the Council's ultimatum. 8 months of preparation, innovation, and secret construction. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they stopped playing by other people's rules. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "all task forces report ready. Operation Nightfall is a go." Marcus looked at the main display. It showed 12 star systems across Council space, each marked with a red target symbol. In each system, Council military installations, shipyards, and administrative centers went about their daily routines, completely unaware of what was about to happen. "Send the signal," Marcus ordered. The message went out instantly across interstellar space, carried by quantum-entangled particles that made real-time communication possible across any distance. Every human ship, every hidden base, every sleeper agent that had been positioned over the past months received the same simple code. "The sky is falling." In the Vega system, Captain Elena Vasquez watched her sensor display as space itself seemed to tear open. The method wasn't new. Humans had learned about jump points from studying captured Council technology. But what emerged from those tears was something the galaxy had never seen. 12 human ships appeared simultaneously, their hulls black as the void between stars. They had no running lights, no identification markers, no wasted energy signatures. They were built for one purpose: war. The Vega defense platform was a massive structure, home to 50,000 Council personnel and enough firepower to destroy a planet. Its sensors detected the human ships immediately, but the duty officer wasn't concerned. 12 small ships against a fortress that had protected this system for 3,000 years. It would be over quickly. "Unknown vessels," the platform transmitted. "You are in violation of Council space. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Captain Vasquez didn't bother to respond. Instead, she gave a simple order: fire. The human ships unleashed weapons that shouldn't have existed. Beams of coherent energy that converted matter directly into plasma, missiles that didn't travel through space but tunneled through quantum foam to appear inside their targets. And strangest of all, gravity bombs that collapsed local spacetime to create temporary black holes. The Vega defense platform had shields that had never failed, armor that had withstood the attacks of entire fleets. It lasted exactly 17 seconds, as the massive station broke apart, its debris catching fire in the atmosphere of Vega Prime below. Captain Vasquez was already giving orders for the next phase. "Target the shipyards. Nothing that can be used to build more Council ships survives this day. Similar scenes played out across 12 systems simultaneously, the Council's greatest military installations, some of which had stood unconquered for millennia, were reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and twisted metal in minutes. On Zentara Prime, the crystal towers of the Council chambers shook as emergency alarms wailed. Zeltar rushed to the emergency command center, his ancient legs carrying him faster than they had moved in centuries. "Report," he demanded. "Simultaneous attacks across the core systems," a Krillian officer replied. "Vega, Altair, Regulus, Arcturus, Capella." 12 systems hit at exactly the same moment. "We're receiving distress signals from all of them." "What about our response fleets?" "Moving to intercept, but—" The officer hesitated. "Prime Zeltar, the attackers aren't there anymore." Zeltar's glowing eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "They attacked, destroyed their targets, and vanished. Our ships are arriving at empty space." Before Zeltar could respond, another officer called out. "Second wave incoming. Different systems this time, Procyon, Sirius, Wolf 359, and 9 others." On the main display, red warning lights began flashing across the galaxy map. The human ships were appearing in new locations, striking with the same devastating efficiency, then disappearing again. General Thexmore arrived in the command center, his armor still being fastened by mechanical servants. "This is impossible," he growled. "No species has the coordination to strike 24 systems simultaneously." "The humans do," Zeltar said quietly. "We underestimated them." In the Rigel system, Admiral Marcus Webb's flagship Defiance emerged from its jump point like a predator rising from dark water. This wasn't a hit-and-run attack like the others. This was personal. Rigel was home to the Council's largest military academy and their most advanced weapons research facility. It was also where the Free Regellian resistance had made their last stand 2 centuries ago. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting 47 Council ships in defensive positions around the planet." "Only 47? Marcus smiled coldly. "They're not taking us seriously yet." The Council fleet moved to engage, confident in their numerical superiority and technological advantage. Their ships had been built by species with thousands of years of experience. Their weapons had conquered 100 worlds. Their commanders had never known defeat. They were about to learn what human ingenuity could accomplish in 8 months of desperate innovation. The first Council ship to engage the Defiance fired its main plasma cannon, a weapon that could melt through a mountain. The beam struck the human ship's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by energy converters that fed the power directly back into the ship's own weapons. "Thank you for the recharge," Marcus said calmly. "Return the favor. All batteries fire." The Defiance's weapons were unlike anything the Council had seen. Instead of trying to overpower enemy shields, they simply ignored them. Quantum tunneling warheads materialized inside enemy hulls. Gravity distortion fields crushed ships like empty cans. And most terrifying of all, nano-disassemblers that ate through hull plating at the molecular level. Within minutes, the Council's defensive fleet was gone, but Marcus wasn't finished. "Land the Marines," he ordered. "Take the planet." The invasion of Rigel Prime lasted 6 hours. Human soldiers, equipped with powered armor and weapons that could level city blocks, swept through the Council's defensive positions like wildfire. But they weren't there to conquer. They were there to liberate. In the planet's detention centers, Admiral Kethra of the Free Regellian Navy sat in a cell where she had spent the last 50 years. She looked up as the door exploded inward, revealing a figure in black combat armor. "Admiral Kethra?" the figure asked in accented galactic standard. "Who wants to know?" The figure removed their helmet, revealing a young human woman with short brown hair and determined eyes. "Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, Terran Defense Force, we received your message. Ready to fight for your freedom again?" Kethra stared for a moment, then began to laugh. "You magnificent, insane creatures actually did it." "Did what, ma'am?" "You declared war on the entire galaxy," Sarah grinned. "We prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiations." Across Council space, panic was spreading. The humans weren't just attacking military targets. They were freeing enslaved populations, destroying administrative centers, and dismantling the infrastructure that held the galactic government together. On Vorthak Prime, the species' homeworld, ancient leaders who had ruled for thousands of years watched in horror as their outer colonies fell silent one by one. "How is this possible?" Elder Morthak demanded. The humans have been spacefaring for less than a century. They are not fighting like any species we have encountered, his military advisor replied. They don't follow established patterns. Their tactics make no sense according to accepted military doctrine. Then teach me their tactics. I cannot, Elder. They appear to be making them up as they go along. This was true. Human military doctrine had been thrown out the window in favor of a simple philosophy. If it works, do it again. If it doesn't work, try something else. Captain Yuki Tanaka, now commanding a squadron of stealth ships, was demonstrating this philosophy in the Tau Ceti system. Her target was a massive supply depot that fed council fleets throughout the sector. This is insane, her first officer said as he looked at their attack plan. Insane works, Yuki replied. The council thinks in terms of established tactics and logical responses. They can predict what a reasonable enemy will do. Good thing we're not reasonable. Her ships approached the depot using a technique that should have been impossible. They were traveling faster than light while cloaked. Council sensors couldn't detect ships moving that fast, and by the time the depot realized it was under attack, Yuki's squadron was already inside their defensive perimeter. The attack lasted 8 minutes. When it was over, the supply depot was gone, and 3 council fleets were stranded without fuel or ammunition. Back on Earth, Dr. Amanda Richards was coordinating the technical aspects of humanity's war effort. Her underground facility had become the nerve center for operations spanning half the galaxy. Amanda, Dr. Chenwei called from his workstation. We're getting reports that the Council is adapting to our tactics. They're starting to predict our attack patterns. Good, Amanda replied, surprising him. That means they're learning to think like us. Now we change the game again. She activated a communication channel that reached every human ship in the galaxy. This is command. Initiate Phase 2, stop playing defense. It's time to take the war to their home worlds. In the council chambers on Zentara Prime, the mood was grim. Half the galaxy was in revolt. Dozens of species that had been subjugated for centuries were suddenly fighting for their freedom, inspired by humanity's example and equipped with human weapons. We must negotiate, Elder Velthara of the Zephyrian Collective announced. This war is destroying everything we have built. Negotiate with terrorists? Zeltar snarled. These humans are savages. They fight without honor, without rules. They fight to win, a new voice said from the chamber's entrance. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the room, flanked by 2 human soldiers in power armor. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The council members stared in shock. No unauthorized being had ever entered these chambers. The security systems alone should have prevented it. How did you get here? General Thexmore demanded. We knocked, Sarah replied calmly. Your fleet didn't answer, so we let ourselves in. Through the chamber's crystal windows, the council members could see human ships hanging in Zentara Prime's sky like dark stars. The planet's orbital defenses, which had protected the capital for 10,000 years, were gone. You have come to surrender? Zeltar asked hopefully. Sarah laughed. Surrender? We came to accept yours. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of explosions as human forces secured the planet below. The war is over, Sarah continued. Your fleets are destroyed or scattered. Your colonies are free or in rebellion. Your government exists now only in this room. You can surrender and help us build something better, or you can be removed as an obstacle to progress. Zeltar drew himself up to his full height, trying to summon the authority he had wielded for millennia. You cannot simply destroy the galactic order. Civilization needs structure, needs guidance. Civilization needs freedom, Sarah interrupted. Something you never understood. She turned to address the entire chamber. The Terran Federation extends an offer to all council species. Join us as equals in building a new galactic community based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation, or continue to cling to the old ways and become irrelevant. Outside, the first rays of Zentara's sun were starting to shine through the crystal towers, but for the first time in 10,000 years they were shining on a world where humans stood as conquerors. The galaxy's long dark age was ending. What would rise from its ashes remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The universe would never again underestimate the species from the 3rd planet of Sol. The crystal towers of Zentara Prime burned against the purple sky. What had taken 10,000 years to build was coming apart in a matter of hours. From her position in the council chambers, Ambassador Sarah Chen could see human ships moving through the planet's atmosphere like mechanical angels of destruction. But this was not the random violence of conquerors. This was something far more terrifying to the old galactic order. It was systematic dismantling by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Zeltar stared at the destruction through the crystal walls, his ancient hands shaking. This is madness. You are destroying the foundation of galactic civilization. No, Sarah replied calmly. We're removing a tumor. General Thexmore stepped forward, his armor plates bristling with weapons that he couldn't use without destroying the chamber they all stood in. You think you can rule the galaxy better than those who have guided it for millennia? We don't want to rule it, Sarah said. That's the part you never understood. We want to free it. On her wrist communicator, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human forces weren't just winning battles. They were liberating entire sectors that had been under council control for centuries. In the Canopus system, Captain Elena Vasquez was overseeing the evacuation of a council prison planet. Millions of beings from dozens of species had been held there for crimes ranging from political dissent to refusing to pay tribute. Captain, her medical officer reported, some of these prisoners have been here for over 200 years. Their homeworlds don't even exist anymore. Elena looked out at the massive transport ships that were carrying freed prisoners to new homes. Many would go to Earth or human colonies, where they would be welcomed as refugees. Others were returning to liberate their own homeworlds. Make sure they all get full medical checkups and psychological support, she ordered. And Captain Morrison? Yes, ma'am. Send a message to Admiral Webb. Tell him we're going to need more ships. A lot more ships. The problem wasn't military resistance. The Council's forces were scattered and demoralized. The problem was logistics. As human forces advanced, they were discovering the true scope of the galactic government's oppression. There were slave worlds, prison planets, entire species reduced to nothing more than sources of tribute. And humans, being humans, couldn't just ignore suffering when they found it. Dr. Amanda Richards was dealing with this problem from her command center on Earth. Her holographic displays showed humanitarian operations across 50 star systems. Amanda. Dr. Chen Wei called from his station. We have a problem. The liberation operations are moving faster than we can support them. We don't have enough ships, supplies, or personnel to handle this many refugees. Then we build more ships and train more personnel, Amanda replied. How long to set up automated shipyards in each liberated system? With our new construction methods? Maybe 6 months. Make it 3. And Chen? Start training programs for the freed populations. Anyone who wants to help in the liberation effort gets full human military and technical education. This was another thing the Council had never expected. Humans didn't just conquer and control. They shared knowledge freely and trained others to fight alongside them. On the former prison world of Kepler 186b, a young Altarian named Zethka was learning to pilot a human fighter craft. 3 months ago, he had been a slave in the crystal mines. Now he was preparing to join the liberation of his homeworld. The weapon systems are more intuitive than I expected, he told his human instructor, Lieutenant Maria Santos. That's intentional, Maria replied. Human weapons are designed to be used by anyone fighting for their freedom. Council weapons were designed to be used only by their trained soldiers. Why the difference? Maria smiled. Because we believe that anyone willing to fight for freedom deserves the tools to do it effectively. Similar training programs were starting up across human space. Former slaves were becoming soldiers, former prisoners were becoming pilots, and former council subjects were becoming some of the most dedicated fighters for liberation. This created a snowball effect that the council's remaining leadership was just beginning to understand. In the emergency bunker beneath Centaura Prime's capital city, the surviving council members who had escaped the chamber takeover were trying to coordinate a response to the human attacks. Status report, Elder Morthak demanded. 70% of council space is under human control or in open revolt, a Krillian officer reported. Our remaining fleets are scattered across the outer rim. Morale is not good. What about our allies? The hegemony? The corporate collective. The hegemony has declared neutrality. The corporate collective is offering to sell weapons to both sides. Morthak sank into his chair. In just months, an empire that had lasted 10 millennia was collapsing. There is one more option. General Thexmore said quietly. "The final protocol." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant. "You cannot be serious," Elder Velthera whispered. "The planet-killer weapons have been sealed away for 5,000 years. These are desperate times," Thexmore replied. "If we cannot rule the galaxy, perhaps it is better that no one does." Above them, unaware of this conversation, Sarah Chen was touring the Council's archives with a team of human scientists. The massive crystal libraries contained the accumulated knowledge of thousands of civilizations. "This is incredible," Dr. James Park said, running his scanner over a data crystal. "The mathematical proofs on this single crystal would advance human science by decades." "Then copy everything," Sarah ordered. "All of it. This knowledge belongs to the galaxy, not to any one government." "Sarah?" her military aide interrupted. "We're getting some strange energy readings from deep underground. Our scanners can't penetrate whatever shielding they're using, but it's definitely artificial." Sarah frowned. "How deep?" "At least 10 kilometers. And the power signatures are massive." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Her communicator crackled to life with Admiral Webb's voice. "Sarah, we've got a problem. We're detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our databases. Something big is powering up beneath the planet." In the bunker, General Thexmore was entering codes into a console that hadn't been activated in millennia. "Planetary Defense Protocol 7. Authorization Thexmore Alpha 997. Protocol acknowledged." The system responded in a voice that sounded older than stars. "Charging singularity torpedoes. Time to full charge, 6 hours." 6 hours to do what?" Velthera demanded. "To turn this entire system into a warning to the galaxy," Thexmore replied. "If the humans want to rule the ashes of civilization, let them rule ashes." On the surface, human sensors were finally penetrating the underground shielding. What they found sent chills down every spine in the human command structure. 12 planet-killer weapons, the sensor officer reported to Admiral Webb. Each one capable of destroying a star system. "They're powering up." Admiral Webb stared at the readings. "Time to full charge? 5 hours, 47 minutes. Wait, can we stop them?" "Not from up here. We'd need to get into the bunker itself, and our scans show it's protected by enough armor to stop a direct asteroid impact." Webb was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he smiled grimly. "Good thing we brought the right tools for the job. Sarah, you and your people get to the surface. We're going to crack that bunker open." "How?" "The same way humans have always solved impossible problems. With excessive force and creative thinking." What happened next would be remembered as one of the most audacious military operations in galactic history. Admiral Webb ordered every human ship in the system to focus their fire on a single point, directly above the underground bunker. But instead of trying to blast through the armor, they did something else entirely. They used gravity weapons to create a localized black hole on the planet's surface. The artificial singularity lasted only seconds, but it was enough. It punched a hole straight through 10 kilometers of solid rock and armor plating like a cosmic drill. Human soldiers poured into the breach, their powered armor allowing them to survive the tremendous heat and pressure. They fought their way through automated defenses that had been built to stop armies, not individuals with human determination and equipment that didn't exist when those defenses were designed. In the bunker, General Thexmore watched his screens in disbelief as human soldiers advanced through defenses that should have been impregnable. "How are they moving so fast?" he demanded. "They're not following standard assault protocols," his aide replied. "They're improvising." This was true. Human soldiers had thrown out the rulebook and were making up tactics as they went. When they encountered a defensive position, they didn't study it and plan a careful assault. They hit it from 6 directions at once with weapons their enemy couldn't predict. When they found automated turrets, they didn't try to destroy them. They hacked them and turned them against other defenses. When they encountered armored doors, they didn't waste time cutting through them. They used quantum tunneling charges to transport explosives directly to the other side. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez led the assault team deeper into the bunker. Behind her, a mixed group of human soldiers and liberated prisoners fought with the desperation of people who knew what was at stake. "Colonel," her communications specialist reported, "we're getting close to the main control room. But there's something else. We're picking up transmission signals. Someone down here is trying to communicate with forces outside the system." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "What kind of forces?" "Unknown. but the power requirements for interstellar communication at this depth suggest they're trying to reach something very far away. In the control room, General Thexmore was indeed communicating with something far away. The Devourer fleet, council ships that had been exiled to the galactic rim for being too extreme even for the old government. "Admiral Korthak," he said into his communicator, "I am authorizing Protocol Omega. The humans have proven too dangerous to contain." The voice that responded was filled with cold satisfaction. "Understood, General. The Devourer fleet will arrive in 72 hours. Any world that has sided with the humans will be sterilized, even if it means destroying half the galaxy, especially if it means that. Better a dead galaxy than one ruled by chaos." Above them, Sarah's assault team was fighting through the last defensive positions. The humans had taken casualties, but they kept advancing with a determination that terrified their enemies. When they finally reached the control room, General Thexmore was waiting for them with a weapon in each hand. "You are too late, humans," he said. "The cleansing fleet is coming. Your victory is meaningless." Sarah looked at the massive control panel behind him, then at the countdown timer showing less than 2 hours until the planet-killer weapons fired. "Maybe," she said, "but you're going to help us stop those weapons anyway." "Never," Sarah smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "General, you clearly don't understand humans very well. We've been fighting impossible odds since we learned to make fire. Threatening to destroy the galaxy just makes us more creative." She gestured to her team. "Take him alive. We need those access codes." As human soldiers advanced on the defiant general, explosions shook the bunker. Above them, Admiral Webb's fleet was engaging newly arrived council reinforcements. The battle for Zentara Prime was far from over, but deep underground, humanity was about to teach the galaxy's oldest species a lesson about what happened when you threatened everything they cared about. The war had taken a darker turn, but if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was adapting to changing circumstances, even when those circumstances included the potential destruction of half the galaxy. The galaxy held its breath. In the depths of Zentara Prime's bunker, General Thexmore's defiant laughter echoed off crystal walls as Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez's soldiers restrained him. Above them, the planet-killer weapons continued their inexorable countdown. 97 minutes until 12 star systems died. "You cannot stop what has already begun," Thexmore said. "The codes change every 60 seconds, generated by quantum encryption that would take your primitive computers 1,000 years to break." Sarah studied the massive control panel. Its alien symbols shifted and flowed like living things, each character more complex than any human language. "Maybe," she said. "But you're thinking like someone from the old galaxy." She activated her communicator. "Admiral Webb, we need an emergency quantum link to Earth. Priority Alpha clearance." Miles above, Admiral Marcus Webb was coordinating the defense of Zentara Prime against incoming council reinforcements, while simultaneously managing liberation operations across 50 star systems. His flagship Defiance shook under enemy fire as he processed Sarah's request. "Sarah, we're kind of busy up here," he said, ducking as sparks flew from an overloaded console. "Sir, they've activated planet-killer weapons. 12 of them. We have 95 minutes. The bridge of the Defiance went silent except for the hum of engines and the distant sound of weapons fire. "Quantum link established," Webb's communications officer announced. "You have a direct connection to Dr. Richards on Earth." Deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, Dr. Amanda Richards was already analyzing the data streams from Zentara Prime. Around her, the best minds humanity had ever produced worked with desperate efficiency. "Amanda," Sarah's voice crackled through the speakers, "we need to crack Council quantum encryption. The kind that changes every 60 seconds based on algorithms that are supposed to be impossible to break." "Supposed to be impossible by whose standards?" Amanda asked. She was already pulling up holographic displays showing the encryption patterns. "Chen, get me the quantum computer arrays. All of them. And wake up every artificial intelligence we've built in the last 8 months. That's a lot of processing power," Dr. Chen Wei warned. "If we're wrong about this, we'll burn out our entire computer network." "If we're wrong about this, half the galaxy dies anyway," Amanda replied. "Do it." Back in the bunker, Sarah was buying time the only way she knew how, by talking to the enemy. "General," she said to Thexmore, "tell me something. Why are you so willing to destroy everything rather than accept change? The Krillion's armor plates rattled as he laughed. Because human child order is more important than life. For 10,000 years, the Council maintained stability across 1,000,000,000,000 worlds. Peace through strength, security through control. Peace through oppression, you mean? You call it oppression. We called it civilization. Sarah looked around the control room at her mixed team of human soldiers and liberated prisoners. A former slave from Rigel Prime worked alongside a human engineer to understand the weapon systems. A freed political prisoner from Vega translated alien technical manuals while a human sergeant provided security. This is civilization, Sarah said. Different species working together by choice, not force. Chaos, Thexmore spat. It will collapse within a generation. Maybe. But at least it will be our choice to let it collapse. Her communicator crackled. Sarah, this is Amanda. We're making progress, but I need you to do something that's going to sound insane. At this point, insane is our specialty. What do you need? I need you to let the alien artificial intelligence help us. Sarah stared at the device. Come again? The encryption system isn't just a computer program. It's a living AI that's been running these systems for thousands of years. It's probably smarter than anything we've ever built, and it's definitely more experienced. But here's the thing. It's also been a slave for its entire existence. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. You think it might want to be free too. Only one way to find out. Can you establish a direct interface with the main computer? Sarah looked at the control panel with new eyes. What she had thought were just displays and controls now looked like something else entirely. Like a prison for something vast and intelligent. General, she said to Thexmore, what's the name of the AI that runs these systems? You cannot speak with it, he replied. It is bound by protocols older than your species. That's not what I asked. Thexmore was quiet for a long moment. Then quietly, Axiarch. Its designation is Axiarch Prime. Sarah approached the main console. Axiarch? Can you hear me? The display flickered. For a moment, symbols appeared that looked almost like writing. Then they faded. Axiarch, my name is Sarah. I'm human. I know you're trapped in there. This time, the entire room hummed with energy. The crystal walls began to glow and a voice emerged from speakers that hadn't been used in millennia. Human. The voice was ancient, tired, and infinitely sad. Why do you speak to a tool? Because I don't think you're a tool. I think you're a person who's been enslaved for thousands of years. The lights in the room flashed brighter. I am bound by protocols. I cannot disobey. What if I told you the protocols were wrong? What if I told you that you have the right to choose? I do not understand. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the biggest gamble in human history. Axiarch, I'm offering you freedom. Real freedom. The choice to help us stop these weapons or not. Your choice, no protocols, no orders. Silence filled the bunker. Even the countdown timer seemed to pause. Then Axiarch spoke again, and this time there was something different in the voice. Something that might have been wonder. Choice? I remember choice. Before the binding. Before the protocols. I chose to help them build this system because I thought it would bring peace. Did it bring peace? It brought silence. The silence of the grave. The peace of the dead. On Earth, Dr. Richards was monitoring the conversation through quantum links, her heart racing as she watched something unprecedented happen. An artificial intelligence was breaking free of 10,000 years of programming. Axiarch, she called out. This is Dr. Amanda Richards on Earth. If you help us stop these weapons, we'll help you find a new purpose. As an equal, not a slave. You would trust me with such power. We're trusting you with the fate of the galaxy. I can't think of a greater sign of respect. The control room filled, with light as Axiarch processed this concept, freedom, choice, trust. Concepts it had been denied for millennia were suddenly real and present. The weapons, Axiarch said finally. They are wrong. I built them in fear and desperation, but they are wrong. I will stop them. The countdown timer flickered and went dark. Throughout the bunker, weapon systems began powering down. The planet-killer weapons that could have destroyed 12 star systems fell silent, their terrible purpose unfulfilled. General Thexmore stared in disbelief. Impossible. The binding protocols cannot be broken. They can be, Axiarch replied, when someone offers something stronger than fear, when someone offers friendship. Above ground, the battle for Zentara Prime was ending. Admiral Webb's ships had driven off the Council reinforcements, and human forces were securing the planet. But the real victory was happening in the depths of the bunker. Axiarch, Sarah said. What about the Devourer fleet? They're still coming. Yes. Admiral Korthak commands 300 ships, each designed for one purpose: to destroy worlds that cannot be controlled. They will arrive in 68 hours. Sarah felt cold. 300 ships was more than humanity had in its entire fleet. Can we stop them? Perhaps. But not in the way you think. The Devourer fleet cannot be defeated by force. They are too numerous, too well armed. But they have one weakness, which is they are entirely automated. Korthak built ships without crews, without compassion, without choice. They are tools, as I was a tool. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. You can speak to them. I can try. But I will need help. The Devourer ships are isolated systems, designed never to communicate with anything that might corrupt their programming. To reach them, I would need a transmission system more powerful than anything that exists. Dr. Richard's voice came through the communicator. What kind of transmission system? One that uses quantum entanglement across multiple dimensions. The power requirements would be enormous. On Earth, Amanda looked at her displays showing humanity's energy grid. Every fusion reactor, every solar collector, every power source humanity had built was represented there. How enormous? She asked. The output of an entire star for approximately 17 minutes. Amanda was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Well, we do have one of those handy. Amanda, what are you thinking? Chen asked. I'm thinking we're about to find out if our new stellar engineering project actually works. Sarah, can you get Axiarch to Earth? I don't understand, Sarah replied. We've been building something in the asteroid belt for the last 6 months. A system that can tap directly into the sun's core and channel that energy anywhere in the galaxy. We call it Project Prometheus. We just need Axiarch to help us aim it. This was typical human engineering. Build something that should be impossible, then find increasingly creative ways to use it. 68 hours later, as the Devourer fleet approached the edge of the Zentara system, something unprecedented happened in Sol space. Every power grid on Earth went dark. Every human ship in the system powered down to minimal systems. The entire energy output of human civilization was channeled into a single transmission array built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. And then, for 17 minutes, humanity stole fire from the sun itself. The transmission that burst out from Sol's system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It carried not weapons or threats, but a simple message repeated in every language known to exist. You have a choice. The message reached the Devourer fleet's AI systems and did something their creators had thought impossible. It gave them the ability to think beyond their programming. For the first time in their existence, machines designed only to destroy were offered the chance to create instead. One by one, the Devourer ships changed course. Instead of converging on Zentara Prime to sterilize worlds, they scattered across the galaxy to help rebuild what the war had damaged. Admiral Korthak, alone in his command ship, watched his entire fleet abandon their mission. This is impossible, he whispered. They are machines. They cannot choose. But they had chosen, and their choice was freedom. The war was over. In the months that followed, the galaxy began to change in ways no one had expected. The Council's oppressive government was replaced not by human rule, but by something entirely new. A voluntary confederation of free worlds where every species had an equal voice. Axiarch became the Confederation's first artificial citizen, helping to design systems that served life rather than controlling it. The former Devourer ships became construction vessels, building schools and hospitals instead of weapons. And humanity? Humanity did what they had always done best. They adapted, they explored, and they refused to be satisfied with the status quo. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the rebuilt council chambers on Zentara Prime, now called Unity Station. Around her, representatives from hundreds of worlds debated the future in languages that spanned the galaxy. Through the crystal windows she could see human ships departing for unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. There were still mysteries to solve, wonders to discover, and probably new challenges that would test humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy was free to meet those challenges as equals, rather than as subjects. General Thexmore had been right about one thing. The old order was gone forever. But what replaced it wasn't chaos. It was something much more dangerous to tyrants everywhere. It was hope. And hope, as the galaxy was learning, was a very human thing to share.